Hello everybody, welcome back to the channel. This is Hunter from Astrophotography. Join me tonight as we do have a pesky full moon, but that's still not going to stop us from doing some astrophotography imaging, as we're going to be going after something known as the Monkey Head Nebula. And with it being a full moon, I'm not going to start any sort of like really long integration project. Well, we do have some clear skies expected tonight, but we do have a 100% illuminated moon, and it's a super moon at that, so it's going to be extra bright in the skies. But if you do narrowband imaging, you still can image during a full moon, especially if you have, some very tight bandpass narrowband filters like I do at 4.5 nanometers. You can still image during the full moon, especially if you're doing some bright targets like this one. Now, I'm no stranger to the Monkey Head Nebula. I usually do it every year or so when it's in our skies, and I actually got to test out the 5A5 mono on the Monkey Head Nebula last year, but only got about 3 hours worth of data. So now that it's not, going away from us and it is heading much higher in the sky, we're going to revisit this target for tonight since, one, it's in a nice placement away from the moon, and two, it's fairly strong in all three of the major emission lines like hydrogen alpha, oxygen 3, and sulfur 2, even though oxygen is kind of hard to do with a full moon because it's in the kind of same light spectrum as the bright moonlight, but it is still pretty easy to pick up some decent oxygen data from this target. So, the Monkey Head Nebula, where is that in the sky? Well, as of right now, it rises above my trees roughly around 9 o'clock or so Eastern Standard Time, and it's in the constellation of Orion. It's actually right near where one of the hands are, and there's actually a plethora of nebulae that is located around the Monkey Head Nebula, like the jellyfish. You also have Lauer's Nebula further down below. That's where the Christmas Tree Nebula, the Rosette, just, the winter constellations just have an enormous amount of very, very bright, nebula targets that you can do when it's a full moon. So let's go ahead and talk about what kind of equipment we will be using inside of the Shedless Observatory for this project. But before going into the nitty-gritty details of what we're going to be using for this project tonight, I do have another observatory update. As you can see, we have the support beams in place, cemented into the ground for when I get the roof done. I'll have a place for it to roll back. Now, I still have to put some center support beams in between because it is still a little bit, not fixed in the ground like I would want it, because these are 10-foot poles and I've dug about 3 foot deep. Also, to put some endings at the back portion of the supports itself so it doesn't, completely roll off the back of it. So still got some minor details I have to do for this phase of the project, because after that, we only have one more thing left to do, and that is the pesky roof. Hopefully, maybe I can get it done this winter, depending if the weather's not too bad, or I can come across a little bit of some extra, funds to support this. So hopefully here soon, we'll have a completely done observatory, and then we can do a full video on it about what it took to, complete something like this, and how much would it normally cost if you would do it for yourself. So for this project tonight, I am going to be using my Newtonian telescope, which is a Skywatcher Quattro 150p, which is a 6-inch Newtonian. Very, very fast focal ratios too, especially with the coma corrector that I'm using, getting down to f3.5, which is roughly about 517 millimeters of focal length. So this thing is an absolute light bucket and gather a lot of data fairly quickly. Tracking everything is going to be on the ZWO AM5 Strainwave gear mount, which has been absolutely a wonderful mount. I've owned it for about 2 years now and have yet to have any problems with it, as a matter of fact. Camera choice I'm going to be using is going to be my monochrome camera, the ZWO ASI 585mm Pro, which inside of the filter wheel there, I'm going to be using 3 separate filters from Antlia, and it's the Antlia Edge, Hydrogen Alpha, Oxygen 3, and Sulfur 2, which are 4.5 nanometer bandpass filters, using a ZWO CAA camera angle adjustment because I want to position this actually to fit the entire nebula, since this is going to be framed kind of perfectly. And then in the post-processing, instead of being horizontal, I'm going to flip it up so you can actually see the resemblance of what the Monkey Head Nebula looks like. Guiding everything here on the other side will be the SV Bunny 40mm guide scope with the camera choice, the ASI 678 mono. So controlling everything will be with the Melee Quieter 4C PC, which is using Nina, which I've been absolutely loving as of lately, ever since switching over to monochrome. Now I've been using Nina and I don't want to go back. And then powering everything is the brand new SV Bunny SV241 Pro power box, and it has been a powerhouse, being ASCOM enabled, and to power literally everything: the computer, the telescope mount, the camera, everything I would need, all in one centralized unit. So we got clear skies tonight. We don't have to deal with wind finally, for a change, since it seems like the last 2 weeks since I've had the walls built around, it's been windy every single night, but it hasn't affected this at all. So it's going to be kind of nice to have a nice, stable, clear night, even though it is going to be so darn bright out here. So we're going to wait for nightfall. We're going to go ahead and go into Nina, set up our image sequence, and see what some of the shots will look like all the way throughout the morning.
All right, so now we're on a computer here. It is nightfall, so roughly around 10 o'clock or so. We're going to go ahead and see where our target is in the sky. So we're going to go over to the framing wizard here. And for the catalog number for this target is going to be NGC 2175. As we go ahead and search over in the framing wizard here. And this is exactly what we're going to be shooting right now, is this target. It is upside down in this view, but with my field of view here, it actually fits quite well in this region here, showing the beautiful structure overall. But where exactly is this in the sky? Well, in reference to, well, it's not too far away from the Orion Nebula. So when we look at the very distinguished Orion Nebula here, we can see here is the shield, we have the top of the head, we have the arm, and it's right by where the arm is where the Monkey Head Nebula is. So as you can see around through here, there's tons of different nebulae that you could choose from in this constellation. So you have, plenty of options to go with. So going in towards my sequencer here, this is how I'm going to have things set up for this evening. So I am going to be doing a series of, exposures between all 3 of the filters. Every time I, take an exposure with one of the filters, it will switch over to the next one, like starting off with Hydrogen Alpha and then doing a 2-minute exposure is what I'm going to be doing. Switches over to Oxygen 3, takes a 2-minute exposure, then goes over to Sulfur 2, takes another 2-minute exposure, and it would just keep doing that all night long until we get towards sunrise, which I had this set for about 6 o'clock in the morning. Now, I am dealing with a little bit of some high clouds here and there, so I'm probably going to be throwing some sub-exposures away, but what can you do? But being that this is such a bright target, it's not going to be too much of a big deal. And this is what it kind of looks like right now. This is a sub-exposure of the Hydrogen Alpha with this scope here, and this is the framing that I have. But if you turn it to a different direction like this, you can actually see the monkey's head itself. You have the forehead, you have the eyes right here, the nose, the mouth, and the neck, and this is the head. Yeah, so it definitely looks like exactly what is advertised. So we're going to try our luck tonight in, capturing exposures, trying to fight through these high clouds here. Hopefully they do go away a little bit later on in the night, and we're going to go ahead and stack our data and see what we come up with. All right, so it's the next day. I had a little bit of some clouds to deal with throughout the night, but I still managed to get about 7 hours worth of data combined between all 3 of the narrowband channels. I went ahead and stacked them in PixInsight, and this is what we got. The first one right here, this is the sulfur data stacked. We can see some pretty nice detail all the way across the field of view here. We can see some of the structures right along the outside. Everything looks, tip-top shape for that. This is the oxygen data here, which I'm kind of surprised I actually got this much oxygen data with that super bright supermoon, as a matter of fact. But this, like I mentioned, it's a pretty bright nebula. So super easy to do no matter if there is a new moon or a full moon. But you can see the oxygen data comes in quite nicely there near the core. And of course, my favorite of all of them is the hydrogen alpha. Now, the hydrogen detail is very strong with this target. You can see some of the darker lanes here on the bottom portion. We have, some of the cliffs here on the front side, because this is tilted on its side from, the profile of what the monkey head will look like. But we'll fix that once we get down a little bit further down the line. So I did my usual stuff that I always do when it comes to doing the prerequisites before combining everything together. I did, dynamic background extractions. I've done a little bit of some blur exterminator. I use multi-scale gradient correction with the Mars data, which usually does pretty darn well. So when you combine all of them together to make your SHO, this is where you're left with. Yeah, it's a very green image overall, but with some little bit of some, adjustments down the line, we can get it to be a fairly nice image. So first thing I did after I combined everything, I got rid of the stars, and then I used something called narrowband normalization, which is going to help take care of all these weird greens and kind of give it that more natural Hubble palette view. So after doing that, we start to see, more of the sulfur and like the golds right around the outside. The hydrogen is kind of more on like a greenish tint. And then we have the oxygen, which is the blue, but I do have a lot of this magenta there in the background. So went ahead and invert that and do a little bit of some SCNR to get rid of that pesky magenta color. And now we start to have something that looks more like your traditional Hubble palette. So then I went and do a little bit more of some sharpening and some dark structures to kind of bring out the nice, dark nebulae that's in the outsides of our target here. And then I just started playing with colors all the way through the line, just kind of, enhancing everything, making it a little bit more vibrant with some color saturation. And then I had to do a little bit of some HDR and some more sharpening there in the center, so I don't really blow out the inner portions of the core. Some more, curves transformations, and then went ahead and did some noise reduction here, and then went ahead and make my black point down a little bit more. So now we start to get this really, really nice looking, rich in color nebula. Did a little bit of some local histogram equalization, which kind of really makes everything kind of pop out. Definitely highly recommend if you're doing, any sort of nebula project right near the end before you bring the stars back. Definitely highly recommend using local histogram equalization, because it makes a huge difference in the overall kind of pop out factor between the two. A little bit more of some noise exterminator, and then we're at the final portion where we would start messing with our stars. So I'm gonna back it up here from what I was working with. Our stars are quite, magenta. That's very typical when it comes to doing, a Hubble palette. I like to use a tool known as, correct magenta stars. You can find that under scripts, and then under utilities, you'll be able to find correct magenta stars. So I went ahead and did that, did its thing. And then we still have like these green hues for the stars, which we got rid of that with doing some SCNR, both on, the background of the image, and also make sure to do it in the invert as well, because there's still some green that I see there in the invert. And then bring it back to regular. And then I just did some, color saturation to give the stars back, a little bit of some color pop. And then this is what we ended up with after we combined everything together. And then I flipped it to, the vertical side, because it gives, what this nebula looks like, a monkey head. We have the forehead right here. This is where the eyes are. You have the nose, you have the mouth and the chin, and this is the head. And here's the neck down here. So yeah, a target that actually looks like what it's named after. And this is with only 7 hours of data, which is one night in a full moon. So if you're looking to have, something that is super nice to do when the moon is full and you happen to have clear skies and you really don't want it to go to waste, this is a great target to do. And you can really do it from all, focal length sizes, even something as close up as this, or something a little bit wider like you have like a Red Cat 51, because there's still nebulosity that is surrounding this entire nebula structure here. And you can do it really in one night, as long as you have clear skies throughout the entire night to do so. I even did this last year when I first got my mono camera. Only got an hour each in each of the individual channels, and it was still pretty darn good. So I hope this video was informative to you, and not to discourage you when it comes to full moons, that you can still image the night sky. You just got to make sure you're doing it in narrowband. Leave a like, comment, subscribe here to the channel. We got some more imaging to do, and I have a lot more work to do when it comes to the Shellos Observatory to finally get this darn roof in place. And if you have any sort of interest of buying some new products for this holiday season, I am running a continued sale here on my Etsy store for some accessories for astrophotography and for smart telescopes. Also have some links to some affiliates of Vegeta Astro, High Point Scientific, of some of the equipment that I use. Something that interests you, it just helps me out free of charge to you. Get a little bit of some commission for it. So hopefully, we get some more imaging here down the line. We have a lot of snow chances ahead, so we'll see what happens going further. So as always, clear skies. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Cheers.